Hello and welcome to The Stack. This week, two of our favorite titles celebrate a decade. So let's celebrate Racquet with Kately Thompson and Weinseller Journal with Chandra Kurt. Plus, designer Oliver Spencer ventures to the world of magazines with the travel title Secret Trips. Enjoy the show. From Midori Housing, London, this is The Stack, 30 minutes of print industry analysis, and I am Fernando Augusto Pacheco. We start the show talking to fashion designer Oliver Spencer, known for his well-designed menswear, but he's also a print lover, so much so that he also publishes Secret Trips, a beautiful travel publication looking at those under-the-radar destinations, independent hotels, and the restaurants the locals don't want you to know about. Let's hear it from Oliver.
I've been in the garment clothing trade for 32 years. I started my life on Portobello Road on a market stall selling second-hand clothing. I opened my first Favourite store in 1902, and then from then it just sort of rolled on. Oliver Spencer in 2003. It took lockdown, there you go, that period of time for me to start thinking a lot about travelling and how much I love traveling and how much I miss traveling. The whole process of how we tell stories around traveling. And I became very disenfranchised with certain websites and publications, and about the fact that I just started realizing that all these articles that were being written were bought articles.
The same hotels, the same kind
stuff the whole time. And then when I came out of lockdown, my friend James Sleaford, who was the fashion editor of GQ in Paris, came to see me in Lamb's Conduit Street for a cup of tea, and he said, "Look, Ollie, I'm being made redundant from Condé Nast. Lots of us are. It's a really tough time for journalists. I'm thinking about doing something in like clothing and travel sector, blog, so on and so forth." And I said, "Well, James, wait a minute, because I've been thinking a lot about this whole travel thing. I wanted to find a way to talk to people about the type of holiday that I used to enjoy when I was young, and I used to read The Lonely Planet. And I would go traveling off for a month, and maybe one of my favorite trips was in Chile, where I went to the bottom of Chile, Punta Arenas, and then I bought myself a 125 motorcycle, and I traveled all the way up to San Pedro de Atacama and up into Bolivia. The whole way, all the way up to Chile. It's like the motorcycle diaries. But I thought to myself, well, in this day and age, I'm a bit older. I still love to ride a motorbike, but I also like to stay not at a hostel. I like to stay somewhere a bit nicer. Not 5-star luxury. I'm more into boutique hotels and really nice glamping. I'm not the guy that's carrying a tent on my back. I like to arrive and the tent's there and it's really nice. There's a comfy bed. But all these types of things. And we're talking about, places to stay. In the issue out right now, we've got a whole thing on tree houses and staying in tree houses. And then the next issue due out, we've got a whole thing on staying in caves. And there are many cave hotels across Europe. I wanted to really explore, and this was something James and I talked about, I really wanted to explore what you would wear on these trips, because they're adventurous, right? This is not about packing a nice shirt and a pair of swimming trunks, because you know what? On my holidays, you're not sitting on the beach. My holidays, the trips that we talk about, are all about an adventure, an education, and basically seeing things. I actually probably want you to come back from a holiday feeling refreshed but really tired out. And I think that's a new way of looking at travel within the sector. So I realized there wasn't a magazine talking about this. I realized there wasn't a website talking about this. So we launched the website first. I suppose the next thing that went on was that James and I just decided, wouldn't it be great if we gave all the journalists that wrote for the publication and the website the chance to invest in it. So more like a cooperative.
Like a collective, which is quite an unusual idea for a magazine. Very
so collective. Well, somebody said to me, you'll be lucky to organise all those journalists. It's a bit like herding cats. And I was like, they were right, by the way. I sat telling them down in a room and I said, right, this is our idea. I'm going to build the website. I was like, well, listen, guys, I'm going to start this business. I'd love you all to write for it. And they were like, yay. They'd all, most of them been made redundant and now freelance and stuff. So we'd done this website. And then there's someone in my life who's always been in my life, a guy called Peter Howarth. Peter and I sat down and I said, I've had this great idea for a travel thing. And we started the travel website. Would you like to be an investor? He's a journalist too, but he's a publicist as well. So he's got a very financially minded mind when it comes to publishing. He was like, yeah, I'm on board. I want to get with this. This is great. And he was the person that said to me, look, this website's great, but, people are getting a little bit tired of advertising online at the moment. If you were to start a magazine, I think I could get a lot of people to advertise with you. I sort of looked at him in this way and I was just like, whoa, okay, is it really going to... And then I started thinking to myself, I started thinking about the record industry and I started thinking about vinyl and I started thinking how vinyl had a massive resurgence. Basically, it was all about that. Spotify is a great thing, but there's nothing better than taking the record out of the sleeve, putting it on the thing, listening to it crackle at the beginning. He said to me, listen, there's nothing better than the feel of really good paper. The slight smell of glue when it comes off, when you open your new magazine. It's tactile, it's textural, it's something you can look at, and it's something that's there. It's permanent. You don't have to turn on a screen for it. And he said to me, believe you me, magazines are going to come back. And our model for delivering the travel stories is very different to anyone else's. We look for people that are interesting, and then we interview them about their travels. We don't go off to Sharm el-Sheikh and sit in the Four Seasons. That's not our model at all. Our model is to talk to people and talk about their travels, their education, their favorite restaurants. One of our first secret tips was Brunello Cucinelli. A few of you might have heard of him. He's a nice Italian man that's done rather well. Yes. Brunello was like, he was absolutely all over it. And he wanted to talk about his village that he's restoring and his favorite coffee shop and how he likes to go for coffee with the priest and all. This was so secret trips. It was just like, oh my God, that's great. And then from that point on, we opened up this whole section in Secret Trips called Secret Tips. And they're a very quick read. It's a 5-minute read. Lots of nice pictures. The
pictures are great, I have to say.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Very good quality.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, the guys in Peter's office work very hard on that. We've got a great team around there. And so at the end of the day, we started establishing this rule of how we would, as an editorial group, achieve great content. And this started happening rather quickly, and we ended up with way too much stuff. And we've got enough editorial to fill the rest of the year at the moment. It gets downloaded to the website. So we just simply edit the best pieces from the website and put them into the magazine. And we're going to do that 4 times a year.
And I think a title like Secret Trips, it's giving what travelers are needing this moment, which is that secret, the hidden gems. Because, of course, I'm not even criticizing over tourism. There's not a problem with that. But people want something different.
I mean, you do a great job of it around here at Monocle with your newspaper and your magazines. I mean, you talk about these things. I think you come at things with quite a lifestyle business angle to them. Whereas I like to say to people that you'll throw all that business stuff away and this is just pure playtime, but with education and experience.
I have to tell you, Oliver, Secret Trips, even before I read it, when I saw the cover, I was like, I need to get this.
Yeah,
I think the cover is really special. It's in Japan, right? I believe it's a sumo.
Sumo wrestler. But they're coming to the UK in October, by the way. They're going to be in the Albert Hall.
I need to go there.
3 nights. It's sold out within like half an hour. I was online going like this. I've got a ticket now.
Well, what's your... I mean... We're talking a lot about personal secret trips. Where are you going this summer? Do you have anything kind of planned that you like to share?
What's happening?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm traveling a lot at the moment to Sicily, which I just absolutely love. Nowhere particularly secret other than Ortasia, which is Syracuse and all of that part. But I'm going back there a lot. I particularly like that place in springtime. It's great for walking. I think the volcano's just gone off, actually, which always gets everybody excited. I've been up that volcano. It's rather high, that volcano. Do you know, I'll give you my secret about that volcano. You know it's got a ski station at the top of it?
I didn't know that.
It's got a ski station, and most years you can ski down that volcano, which is rather funny, but it's very high. So I'm spending quite a lot of time there. In a couple of weekends' time, I'm going to fly down to Nice, and I'm going to rent a motorcycle. I'm going to drive to a friend of mine's birthday party in a place called Briançon, which is on the French-Italian border, which is high up in the Alps and very beautiful, and not what you would call a typical place to go in the Alps, but it's so special and so beautiful. It's one the French just go, shh, don't tell anyone about.
Now we all know it.
I can't wait.
I have a question to you. How do you use your brand and Secret Trips together? Because I know you have some great stockists. I saw Secret Trips at Good News, my local in Soho.
Your local one, yeah.
But I know you sell on the Oliver Spencer website as well.
Yes.
What about in your shops? Is there any kind of cross-promotion there?
So, yeah, there's a little bit of cross-pollination is what we call it. Cross-pollination. So our distribution method in the early days was the most important question that we asked ourselves, because as a new publication, building up distribution is very difficult. So one of my other shareholders is a guy called Nick Brooks, who owns a label that I'm sure that your listeners will be familiar with, Sunspell. Great white T-shirts, great clothing. British luxury, which is great to see. So Nick's a shareholder, and Nick and I sat down one night over a glass or two of wine, and we were like, okay, well, this magazine, we can distribute it, and we can distribute it in a rather interesting way. Every time someone orders from us a shirt, a T-shirt, a pair of trousers, we put in a copy of the magazine.
Fantastic.
So we have no distribution costs on the magazine, and everybody gets a copy of the magazine with their order. And when we explain this to some of our advertisers, I mean, we have quite a list. We have about 18 advertisers in the mag now. They were like, wow, so you're going to let us go in front of your customers? And we were like, yeah, of course we are. This is part of the model. Competition, by the way, is a very good thing for us all. You get better with competition.
I agree.
You learn from competition. It's a really important part of life. Everyone in the office sometimes says to me, oh, we're being copied again. I'm like, great, we're doing a good job. Well, we're not being copied. We're not doing a good job. Now, guys, move on. Let's recreate. So the distribution was very, very important. We're printing at the moment about 18,000 copies every quarter. Those easily go out. We're in the Mark Hotel in New York, which is a good start. So we're in a few selective hotels. We're in a few selective news agencies. We're in the Sunspell stores. We're in the Oliver Spencer stores. And that so far is our distribution channel. We're working on a lot of other things, but it's not something that we're chasing. Everybody's quite happy with what we're doing at the moment, which is a really nice place to be. Got a lot of tourist boards are now speaking to us about doing trips, our type of trip.
Secret trips.
Yeah, something that explores their country. So, nobody ever goes north of Porto when you go to Portugal. And seldom do people go in that middle spot between Porto and Lisbon, or up into the countryside as well. They'll mostly go south of Lisbon or just to Porto. Douro Valley is obviously well known as well. But that's Portugal, but there are many stories to tell about many different countries, and our trips are always going to be for people that kind of want to roll their sleeves up and get stuck in on holiday and see things, be educated, and eat food that perhaps they would not normally get at all in a normal restaurant. And I think that's, a really important thing.
Thank you, Oliver. And for more information, go to secrettrips.com. And we're right in the middle of Wimbledon. Always a pleasure to welcome Caitlin Thompson from Racquet magazine to our studio. And this time we're talking 10 years of Racquet. That's fantastic. The title keeps on growing. And then Caitlin tells me also why tennis works so well on the printed page.
It is hard to believe it's been a decade of publishing this beautiful print magazine. We've obviously expanded quite a bit. We're doing a lot more in the digital space, where we first were, sort of very choice and distinctive in terms of how we made things that were not print. But print really is truly our lifeblood, and no one here understands that better than you guys, because Monocle has really led the way in redefining what analog offline luxury is. Offline is the luxury. And I think for us, yes, of course, we want to have connections with our audience. We want to make content that captures them and engages them. We're launching later this summer. You're going to be the first to know something we're calling the Final 8 Club, which will be a very high tier of application-only membership where we, give you a concierge for tennis experiences and viewing and playing around the world. And, of course, limited edition fits and print tangible items. But really the core of it is telling beautiful stories about this sport that we love very much in the medium of print and having that tactile experience, because nothing really has replaced it. And if anything, a decade on, and what is this, 15, 20 years for Monocle, print is this thing that people, feel very emotional about, and for good reason. And so for us, it's very exciting to celebrate it with people who really understand it like you.
And the brand remains strong. So, of course, there's been a few reinventions there, but I think it still has the DNA of Racquet. And I think that's very important, right? I mean, the secret for success. So, we have to keep the DNA, but change a few things here and there as well, so people don't get tired or people get surprised even as well.
Completely right. I mean, one of the things that I was thinking about, as you mentioned that it was a decade, it had sort of slipped my mind just because it's been, there's always the next tournament, there's always the next issue, there's always the next project to look forward to. So really thinking about a decade ago when we were launching this, I was very inspired by Monocle and by Tyler and by the formula of creating a world. And I remain in such admiration of that. And like any world, you have to keep making sure your borders are open, your population is healthy, people are, surprised and delighted by what they might find. 10 years ago, when we were posting pictures of beautiful tennis courts around the world and reminding people about tennis's swaggy past of, Bjorn Borg going to Studio 54 with Grace Jones.
Great shorts as well.
Great shorts and a fur coat. There was no visual vocabulary for tennis. And now anyone with an Instagram account is sharing in this love we have. And I don't view that as anything other than expanding the pond. And it also allows us to keep innovating and keep pushing forward. So we don't have to do that anymore because we did it for a long time. And so thinking about ways that we can keep the door open and invite the next generation of tennis fans, especially the ones who don't know they're tennis fans yet, is always a privilege to do it. And actually, it's a good introduction to what I am here specifically doing. Obviously, we have some beautiful coverage of Wimbledon. We'll have a new cover with an artist I cannot wait to talk about because he's just super brilliant. And also, by any means, I'm not the first to discover him. But we're opening up our doors, starting with an event this week at Fanatics, to welcome the collectibles world, people who are, really religious about collecting items. And it's not very distinct from the way that we treat our print publications. And so we'll be in residence at Fanatics for the next 3 weeks, and people can go with a purchase, get an issue of our print magazine. They can enter to win subscriptions. And I'll be in conversation with Britain's #1 player, Jack Draper. So for me, it's really fun to just continue to open the door, invite new people in it, and make the world even bigger. Because unless you're constantly reinventing, you get stale and boring. And who wants to do the same thing over and over again?
So whoever's in London in the next 3 weeks, they can just go to the shop just in Regent Street and, they can perhaps see the new issue of Racquet as well.
Exactly. You can walk into the doors and experience a little bit of the Racquet ecosystem. But yeah, this is just such an exciting time. I think for me, Wimbledon and the grass court season, especially with Queens just wrapping up this past week and a half, 2 weeks, it's just such a wonderful time to be able to bring people together around an aesthetic. That's the other thing. It's such an aesthetic time, this green grass. It's a short time on the tennis calendar. And for that reason, maybe you all living in London, or the listeners who have the privilege of living in London or around the UK, tennis is associated with grass. But for the rest of us, it's actually such a rarity. And it's such a beautiful thing. And so when you're able to bring beautiful photography, beautiful art, beautiful coverage of that, it becomes something really elevated. And I think we never want to miss a chance to do it. So that's why I'm here every year doing it, because I can't stay away.
You have to stay longer next time. But let's talk about the new issue, because every time I see a cover of Racquet is incredibly beautiful. But you guys keep doing an even better one. And this artist, he's extremely famous. His name is Werner Bronkhorst, right?
Yeah, Werner Bronkhorst is a South African artist. Had a lot of experience basically between Commonwealth countries. He spent a lot of time in Australia. He was in New Zealand for a time, and now he's based in London. Young artist, incredibly captivating. And he is known for his incredibly thick application of paint and his beautifully wrought, tender, tiny miniature people on these landscapes of paint. And he's been doing series and series about sport, specifically tennis. And so we largely because two members of my team, one called Chase Brill and another woman named Christy Ahn, who used to play on the pro tour actually, were massive fans of his. They are so much more attuned to the art world than I am. And they said, hey, can we get him to be our July cover? Can we get, be in conversation with him? He's a huge deal. His work is really moving and exciting. And so I said, sure, I always am keen to make connections. And obviously, if somebody's enthusiastic about a work of art, they'll make for a good interview. And so I DM'd him and I just said, hey, listen, Racquet and da-da-da-da, and we're fans. And I assumed he was a tennis fan, just given how often, it's golf, there's themes of football, there's themes of other sports, but tennis really does take a repetitive theme in several of his collections. And he said, you're not going to believe this, but I'm in London right now racing to complete an exhibition that I'm going to be launching just days before Wimbledon starts. And I would love to chat with you in between, being able to paint, of course. And I said, sure, why don't we email you some questions? And if you don't mind, we can surface one of these works on our new cover. So it launches later this week. And I could not be more excited about it because it is so evocative of so many different flavors that we like to add to the stew of tennis.
And that's the thing with tennis. I think for me, there are two sports that I love when it comes to imagery. One is surfing.
Of course.
I'm a massive fan. But tennis as well. There's no surprise that the fashion community loves it. More and more, I would say. So even if you're not necessarily a big tennis fan, you are influenced, the way you're dressed. Don't you think?
Completely right. It's funny. The first stop off the plane this morning, I went to Selfridges stop, and I went into one of the sporting goods stores because I wanted to get my hands on the Wimbledon collection, which has not yet hit New York shelves. And for me, the visual vocabulary of the tennis world, you think of the Stan Smiths, you think of the tennis skirts, you think of the tennis vests. I'm wearing one right now. You think of this idea of so many things. Shorts. The shorts are sorry. That's the second time you've mentioned that. So I feel like maybe that's a particularly strong note for you. But I think, it's been so exciting to see, when we were here last year talking to you, we had just launched a cover with Gucci, which had sort of decided to reclaim a little bit of the space in the sporting world. Obviously now we see Miu Miu collaborating with New Balance for the clay season for Coco Gauff, who just won the French Open. So, you really see these brands, these historic fashion houses, new startups, and everyone in between really inspired and feeling like they can play in this space. And I think it's the combination of the timelessness of the sport. It really does transcend age, class, geography. These are people who are playing, whether it's recreationally or at the highest levels, from 5 to 95. That's what I hope to be doing in my retirement, by the way. I'm going to be playing competitive tennis until I'm the last person standing. And you better believe that I'm going to have an incredible fit on, because looking the part is just as important as not. And so I've been really excited to see how these fashion brands, particularly the ones that have sort of historic roots in the sport, have felt permission to go beyond our fabric wicks sweat and it's going to give you the most support in a long match. And it's like, well, that's not actually really speaking to the way people want to wear these clothes. They want to wear them because they feel like, they're Princess Diana getting off of a court, or they want to feel like they're, maybe Boris Becker serving volleying with the short shorts. That one's for you.
Third time.
They want to feel like they're part of this ecosystem. And I think for me, the conversations we have about the sport and the conversations we have about fashion are almost synonymous. I ask fashion writers to write for us all the time, and we'll have some in this coming issue, because it just is part of the world that you have to acknowledge. And I've been so excited because up until really this last year or two, the tennis ecosystem hasn't always been very welcoming to, outsiders. And now I think they understand that it's helping win them new fans, and it's just another way to experience fanship. And so for me, that, again, is very in line with our mission, which is to be this expansive, warm, elevated, but also very welcoming and I think always curious folks about the sport and who can define themselves as being part of it.
And finally, Caitlin, let's be honest, the celebrations have started. But what about, do you have any plans for the 10 years of Racquet? Is it going to be a little bit kind of a retrospective, or you're someone that just looks ahead?
Oh, it's a good question. I will tip my hand once again to tell you some of the celebrations we have, because the actual launch will be at the U.S. Open. And so for us, this whole summer is really a celebration. Obviously, we'll have some beautiful coverage here at Wimbledon. We had some photographers and writers at Queen's last week. We'll go to a few other places this summer. And then what we're really going to do, and actually this fortnight at Fanatics for our Racquet in Residence is a little bit of a preview of what we will be doing in New York, because we are taking over a massive historic footprint along the water, and we will have podcast studios, video content, screening, parties, watches, retail, an anti-club club that anyone who is in New York and anyone who wants to feel like they're part of it can come join. So I'll tease it with one 3-word phrase. Seaport Racquet Club will be the home of our 10-year celebration.
All our New York listeners are happy. And not just New York, because I'm sure a lot of people will be traveling there as well.
Don't miss what we're doing. If you'd like social media and all the newsletters, accounts and all that is where you can find out more. But yes, if you're here in London or looking ahead to a summer, we're so excited to be, just part of the tennis celebration because it's only getting bigger and bigger.
Thank you very much, Caitlin. And for the next 3 weeks, you can visit the store Fanatics in London's Regent Street for some racket products. And the new issue of Racquet with the amazing cover by Werner Bronkhorst is out now. And finally on the show, always a pleasure to discuss wine and magazines with Chandra Kut, founder of Weinseller Journal, a beautifully designed wine publication that we love. So besides giving me top wine tips for the summer, she's in the studio to celebrate an important date for her title.
If you think about 10 years in a time frame, like the life of a wine or the life of a wine plant, it's amazing. And I'm really happy that we can celebrate this year 10 years Weinseller Journal.
How do you see, of course, the big celebratory issue be issue 40, which will be slightly later in the year.
Yep.
How would you compare the first issue with now? There's been some redesigns.
Absolutely.
But the soul is the same.
Let's say the soul, I'm the soul in this magazine, so the soul is the same. Of course, I'm also evolving. I'm also getting older. There's a younger generation following, and they also do their tribute to wine. But the magazine, in a way, had from the beginning a different approach to wine communication, as I never wanted that somebody has to be an expert to understand the field or the wine, because of course wine is a lot of technical stories and things you have to know, and wine has also a part of the wine is very elitistic. Some part of the wine world makes sure that you will never enter, that you have to become a member to understand, but it's only a little part of the wine world, and the Weinseller Journal really wants to show an approachable way to wine, that wine can be a wonderful journey. There are all kinds of wines in all kinds of places, so it's a journey through the planet. You travel all over, you visit people, you discover wine, and it's not only sometimes about wine, it's really the people, it's the food, it's the culture, because wine, you can compare it even with art, it's an art craft. So there are different levels of arts, older, younger, it's an evolution that never stops.
And, I know issue 39 is out now in the newsstands, but I'm looking at issue 38 and the type of stories you cover. I mean, you basically was talking to the Amorim family in Portugal. They are one of the most important families in Portugal, closely related to the wine industry.
Yes.
What a story.
Oh, this is beautiful because you see there's the liquid, the wine, of course, but you also have the packaging, and the Amorim family is famous for the cork. Mm-hmm. And the cork that you have when you open the bottle, it's the cork. But they, for example, don't use the cork only for the wine. The bigger industries, like you do whole, for the NASA even, they work with cork. They do floors with cork, furniture with corks. So it just goes beyond the topic. But the Luisa Amorim from the family, she's a big wine passionate, and she has different wineries in all over Portugal, and starts there are new projects of wine, but also with preserving the land, the oak trees, the land, the wines, and it's such a beautiful story to tell, because you can also visit these places. And my approach to wine is that you will always love a glass of wine more when you have been at the place and felt the earth, felt the people, ate the food from there, and then the wine will even taste better.
And another thing, because I just want to bring a topic you mentioned about being democratic when it comes to wine. And you do have a part of the magazine when you talk about the wine you can buy actually in the Swiss
Absolutely,
supermarkets.
yeah.
And visiting Switzerland, I actually have to say the relationship of the country and wine is amazing, because you can go to the supermarkets and buy an amazing wine for a very good price.
Yeah.
That doesn't happen in every country.
No, so this is actually the journey of Weinseller started a little bit via the supermarkets, because I did the book. Can you imagine, this year it's 28 years I do it. So I taste the core assortment of all the big houses. Because Switzerland is, yes, we have maybe a little bit more salary, but we also spend more money for the wine. And a lot of wine is really sold via the supermarkets, and not necessarily discount wines. It's normal wines. Our average price, I think it's about €7 per bottle as an average price. So they have a huge assortment. The Swiss market was always an open market. So there's not only wine from Switzerland, there's wine from Europe, from America, from all over. So you can discover a lot of wine via this channel. But then the book, it's just tasting and tasting. You can tell more stories. So then after a while, the magazine was born out of the book.
Amazing. Tell us about some of the highlights of issue 39, which is just out, fresh from the newsstands.
So we went to another very important personality of the wine world, is Gérard Bertrand in the south of France. He fell in love with the Languedoc-Roussillon, and he has there about 17 different wineries. And each winery tells another story. And they're also arranged like this that you can really visit them, you can sleep there, and you can taste the wine there. There's, of course, summer is always a rosé time. And rosé time, the rosé exploded. You can almost say there's a time before there was Whispering Angel and the time after Whispering Angel. So there's a lot of new things happening with rosé wines. Also in the food, for example, we speak a lot about, what you eat in the summer is like Krustentiere, like shellfish, fish, and summer dishes.
Amazing. That thing about the rosé, I think we were in Zurich and somebody was saying, can I put some ice cubes in my rosé? I mean, people need to talk to you. That's not a problem anymore.
No, absolutely. I mean...
let's break the taboos.
I think wine, it's a personal experience and you should do how you feel comfortable. And when it's warm, why should you drink a warm rosé? Put some ice in it.
And Chandra, I want to talk to you as well about the other side of you. You also do a lot of wine consultancy for brands as well. So tell us, how do you divide your time? Because to make a magazine like this is not easy. It's a beautiful title, a lot of pages, amazing photography, good design.
Yeah, well, if I only knew, it's a lot of... Maybe I don't do so many weekends. So
and you're on Monocle on Sunday quite regularly, so,
So, of course, the production time of the magazine is clearly planned. And let's say, I will briefly say it's a month when I do only the issue and the content. And then the rest you plan around the year. It's a tight schedule.
Amazing. And Chandra, I know Tyler does that with you all the time. But for a sunny weekend here in London, what are you drinking?
Well, I have to say I'm very much on gin tonic.
Wow, that's controversial.
I don't know, because I'm in the UK and I always think about the Queen, the late Queen. They always had gin tonic and they lived so long, so why not?
I'm going to go on a tangent here as well, because the Brits, they love their sparkling wine. I know it's very good and respected. Do you agree? Would you take a British sparkling instead of the
Absolutely.
champagne?
And this is a story we're going to cover in the future also, because you have to imagine that the climate here in the UK is now like 30 years ago in Burgundy. So what they do with Pinot Noir and Chardonnay is just amazing.
Thank you, Chandra. And the new issue of Weinseller Journal is out now. That's it for this week's show. My thanks to our editor, Jack Jewers. Any comments or queries, feel free to write to me, Fernando, at fb@monocle.com. And remember, we're back next Saturday at 10 a.m. London time. Meanwhile, you can always listen again at monocle.com or subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You've been listening to The Stack. I'm Fernando Augusto Pacheco. It's goodbye from me.